Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Eves and Ted Trafford, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
How you doing?
Liam, great. How about you?
I'm good. It's we've got our summer today. Again, we've had 2 days of summer now, so I know it's crazy. We've doubled our we've doubled our summer. It's quite remarkable.
That's amazing.
So I'm pretty good. But I have been getting a little bit hot and bothered with a particular curious question this week.
Okay.
So my question is, what are the consequences of poorly written or poorly designed protocols?
I love that. So the first thing, I'd actually throw it back at you first.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, what makes a poorly, I've had this question before from sponsors. Yeah. What makes a poorly written protocol? How do they know that it's a poorly written protocol?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I wish I thought about that. I'm going to say...
I'm putting you on the spot.
I love it. I'm going to say that it's a protocol that requires at least one substantial amendment.
Okay.
I'm going to say, I'm going to just keep it like that. I'm going to keep it
simple.
Just keep it simple. That's how I operate.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to establish, you've clearly had issues if you have to amend the protocol. And I think there's other signs, and so the consequences of a poorly written protocol, I think you can define them in both short-term and long-term.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got some really simple things that are consequences of poorly written protocols. So things like, an increase in protocol violations or participant withdrawals that result of, poorly designed protocols. And I think there's both the writing of the protocol and the design of the protocol that can be poor.
Yeah.
And so the poor design can result in, decreased enrollment or retention of patients. And then just the writing itself, if it's not clearly written, if there's discrepancies in the protocol, if there's errors, if there's, all sorts of different things that can lead to, site frustration and confusion and, fortunate for the sites, they can get more queries because the protocol wasn't clear and or didn't match the ECRF, and then you get inundated with queries at the site level. So, those are some of the immediate impacts of a poorly written protocol. Like ultimately, it can throw your whole enrollment timeline out of whack.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. I was reading an article, I think from Tufts, if I remember, and they were saying that it's like, we require now, I think it's around like phase 2 have the highest prevalence of protocol amendments that are required. It's around 90% of studies require them. And what they were saying is that there's a direct correlation between increased complexity and higher amendment rates. Which is obviously no surprise, exactly to your points there, in which that you all of a sudden, you're looking for, let's say, for instance, that there's obviously regulatory requests for changes and things like that, but what they deem as sort of changes in study strategy, i.e. the changing the inclusion exclusion criteria or making changes to the operational aspects of it, was super interesting to me.
Yeah,
but I think
it would be.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was like really pondering around was like the reason behind these, why they are designed or written poorly. Not in all instances, of course, but in, as mentioned, that there's a lot there. If in phase 2 we've seen sort of 90% require amendments, like what do you think some of the reasons are behind that?
Well, I think that one reason, if you look at the patient journey, is that a lot of sponsors don't fully understand the patient journey. And so by not understanding the patient journey, they're building in inclusion-exclusion criteria that are unrealistic. They are building a design that an individual that has that indication just can't tolerate.
Yeah.
And so, and I would suspect that if we're talking about a lot of phase 2 studies, then perhaps we're talking about phase 2 studies done at sponsors who don't have a lot of experience in that indication.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're kind of dealing with it the first time, and they've maybe gone out to some KOLs to try and get some input, but they don't understand operationally the impacts of the patient journey. So I think that can definitely have an impact on what causes, what it looks like as far as the poorly designed protocol.
I know that I spoke with Ken Getz from Tufts. It must be 12, 18 months ago now, and he was saying, it blew my mind that they were saying that on average, I think it was phase 3, they were saying that it's costs something like $500,000 per amendment, and effectively drains 3 months of time to do each one of these, and it's just. I mean, I was thinking on this and just going do we have this culture of because it's based upon a lot of complexity, do we have this culture that we focus on addition rather than subtraction? Or, are we trying to be too smart and ask too many questions, gather too much data, when in actual fact we should be just looking to simplify where possible?
Well, there's no question that's a huge need. But you touched on something that stood out so you mentioned the cost of an amendment, but it's not just the costs go much farther and longer term than just that amendment.
Yeah.
So if I'm a site and I'm participating in a study with a sponsor and I'm dealing with a poorly written protocol, and we've had 3 amendments for that study, the next study I'm going to do with that sponsor, I'm going to ask for more money.
Yeah.
Because so it drives up your future costs, not just with sites, but with other vendors as well. It also hurts the reputation of the sponsor, because you may have good sites in the future say, I'm not working with that sponsor on their next study because of the disaster the first one was.
Yeah.
And the other thing that, having to put in place these amendments, often it's not just putting in place an amendment, because if the amendment is being issued because enrollment is struggling, then you're probably increasing your cost by having to add more sites to the program too.
Yeah.
So it really is,
the consequences,
a much bigger cost than what Tufts was estimating, I believe anyways.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, it's just that it's very hard, I think, for people who are working on these protocols to almost future, I think a really interesting question if I sat in, and I've been fortunate enough to be in this position where I've been able to do this, is to sit in the room and asking the question of what are the consequences of this decision. Are they based upon assumption or facts? By adding this, I use BMI just because it's easy, but by adding BMI
that's my favorite.
30 rather than 35, do you understand the implications of that on your your timelines? And most of the time it's no, we don't. But,
well, I think that goes into a whole other topic we should get into sometime about what I call micro changes to the protocols. And just by making small adjustments to a number of things can have a significant impact on the ability of the study to enroll on time.
Well, and I think to that point, it's trying to build in as much agility in the process as possible, right? It's I love that micro adjustments. It's the first image that sort of came into my head is that you're trying to get to a destination on a speedboat where you can just make those quick changes and carry on going, rather than being on some big cruise liner that is going to take you 3 weeks just to change a little bit of direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it affects so much.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are affected by the poorly written protocol that it's, hey, if you've got 20 footnotes on your table of procedures, you've got a poorly written protocol.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And it's going to cause you problems.
Yeah.
Like that's the easy way to answer that question. If how do I know if I've got a poorly written protocol? Well, how many footnotes do you have, and what's the size of your exclusion criteria list?
Such a good. I think these rules of thumb are so critical. One of my favorite sayings is, it's better to be roughly right than precisely wrong. And, I think that there's something interesting. As you say, that's a really good sort of litmus test. There's a great, digress for a second, but there's a great story about a particular rock band. I can't remember who it was. And what they would do is, before doing any gigs, they would have this laundry list, right? Of these are all the things that need to be true when, everything's being set up for the sound, the room, their changing rooms, their backstage or whatever it's called.
The green M&Ms they need, or whatever.
Exactly. And it was that what they put in there is that they said, okay, pick out all the, say, green M&Ms in the contract somewhere. So what it wasn't actually because no one liked the green M&Ms, but it was using that as a proxy for everything else. Because if the green M&Ms were there, it was quite clear that someone's going to have missed issues with things like the sound. And to your point around the protocol is that, just something like looking at those footnotes as a proxy to understand the rest of it is actually quite an interesting idea there.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and there's probably some truth to that. We'll have to do a study of that.
So for everyone listening, make sure you don't have any green M&Ms in your protocol. Cool. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Great question. Yeah.
We'll speak soon.
Yeah. Talk soon.
Bye.